This is Matthew Kratter's Bitcoin University. Today I want to talk about Bitcoin Core and some Catch-22's that we've been experiencing. I already a couple days ago talked about the CAT and how this new soft fork proposal was being blocked from being posted on the Bitcoin development mailing list. I think blocked is probably a better word than censored. Censored, the verb should probably be reserved for the actions of governments. But anyway, this new soft fork proposal was being blocked from the Bitcoin dev mailing list. Jevy responded, "Who is censoring this proposal, or are you continuing to sensationalize to garner more views?" Which, to be clear, Jevy, is not something I've ever done. Bitcoin Core did go rogue this year, if you've been paying attention, and the blockchain is 40% full of dust UTXOs caused by spam. So hopefully you're talking about that in your life as well as a Bitcoiner. But anyway, he says, who is censoring this proposal? My response, Bitcoin Core dev mailing list has refused to publish it. That's a prerequisite for it becoming a BIP. So there's a catch-22. And then Bryan Bishop responds, who, as I understand it, is one of the moderators of the Bitcoin dev mailing list. He says, it's not true that you must post to the mailing list to suggest a BIP, a Bitcoin improvement proposal. You can post it anywhere on the internet and contribute and distribute to anyone you want. However, I don't have to post it to the mailing list. And as a BIP editor, I don't have to spend time on things I think are dumb or a waste of my time. Thank you for understanding. So it looks like Bryan has power both over what gets on the mailing list as well as what gets accepted as a BIP. My response to him was, if this is true, shouldn't someone update the BIP 3 documentation here where it says the novelty and viability of the idea should be tested by posting a new dedicated thread about the idea to the Bitcoin development mailing list. And I took that from here. This is BIP 3, which has to do with how BIPs are updated. And so this is the catch-22 I was talking about, and it was not made up. As Giacomo writes here, I thought it was pretty funny. He writes, when Bryan is saying nobody can force someone to platform or support a dumb BIP, Giacomo responds, well, maybe Bitcoin developers need a new mailing list where they can discuss BIPs that Bryan personally dislikes, also considering that the first required step for a BIP is mailing list discussion. And it's not like the mailing list is free of scammy ads and really stupid posts that made it through this moderation process, which apparently isn't very good if it's keeping out soft fork proposals that are quite good, but it's posting stuff like this, which is just basically an ad for Starkware, which is another attacker on Bitcoin, or this really dumb post about why op return spam is beneficial. This really needed to be posted instead of the Bitcoin soft fork proposal, the CAT. And then in the ultimate irony, Bryan Bishop here posting, allowing one of his own posts through to the Bitcoin dev mailing list. And this post is about the case for privatizing Bitcoin Core, where he writes, I believe that reflection is critical for curiosity, understanding, improvement, and progress. And recent activity on the Bitcoin Core GitHub account has given me an opportunity to reevaluate my beliefs about open source software development on GitHub. This was dated June 10th, 2025. And so I believe this is in response to the so-called brigading, where people were posting on that pull request that Gloria ended up merging the data carrier size, the uncapped data carrier size one, where plebs and everyone actually had an opinion that this PR was not acceptable. And so I guess Bryan did not like the way that looked. It was a bit rough, but I'm not sure what you're supposed to do when Bitcoin Core, when the reference implementation goes rogue. So this is the ultimate irony, Bryan posting something like this, or allowing himself to post, I should say, since he is a moderator, allowing himself to post the case for putting all of this behind closed doors. And so we can see, perhaps, this makes me think perhaps the CAT didn't make it through the mailing list simply because it was an anti-spam proposal that Bryan personally didn't like. So this is the situation we're in. As Start9 writes here, not sure what to make of this proposal yet, but attempting to silence it is ridiculous. Allegedly, Claire submitted the proposal to the mailing list, but it was censored, so she submitted it to GitHub, where it has now been rejected for skipping the mailing list. Classic catch-22. Lawrence writes, we're getting a lot of spam. Closing prematurely is better than allowing all that crap through. So he's saying they're getting a lot of spam on the GitHub. And then what's really ironic is if you scroll down, you'll see Lawrence saying miners are paid, other users are basically unaffected. Why should we care? Spam is basically a fly on the windshield. So as I responded to that, I took pictures of both of those, put them together, and wrote, so spam on Bitcoin is not a huge problem, but spam on GitHub is. It's funny that you have no problem defining what spam is when it suits you. These are always the same people. They can't tell you what spam is on Bitcoin, but in their own little domains, they can tell you that this is spam on GitHub, or Callie can tell you that it's spam on his project, what he doesn't like. But these people, they're unable to extrapolate these ideas to spam on Bitcoin because they're highly ideological, obviously. I thought Giacomo had another great post here where he compares and contrasts three things that really can't all be true at once. Number one, the maintainers of this repository, the GitHub for the Bitcoin repo, the maintainers of this repository are just neutral janitors. This is, of course, what they're saying, and I made a video about this. Are they really janitors? Do janitors get paid $500,000, $600,000 a year and not have to listen to anyone? The maintainers of this repository are just neutral janitors. They merge, in other words, they merge code at the pleasure of the whole community. They don't hold any power or privilege. So that's one statement that we hear from Bitcoin Core. The next statement, if you don't like what maintainers of this repository do, you shouldn't voice displeasure, but just silently move on to another repo of your own. In this one, they decide unilaterally, and this would mesh well with Bryan Bishop's idea that Bitcoin Core development and the GitHub should be private, and we should keep the plebs out of it, keep everyone else out of it, just let the experts decide. Reminds you a lot of how the U.S. government has worked. So that's number two, which contradicts number one. Number three, his point is, quote, moving to another repo is reckless and irresponsible. This is in reference to people moving to Bitcoin knots. You and your followers will miss out on security patches. Also, you are fracturing the community and attacking the project. You want to become a benevolent dictator. As Giacomo concludes here, each one of these claims can be legit on its own merits. In some particular context, they are clownishly inconsistent when uttered together. And this is one of the big problems with Bitcoin Core and the way it does everything. There are these inconsistencies, but of course they exist as a way of holding on to power. This is how it always happens. This is what happened during COVID with Fauci, etc. It would be trust the science, but then you weren't really allowed to discuss the science. As Luke DeWolf writes here, this whole op return of 444, BIP 444, BIP 110, the CAT situation has shown that the entire core apparatus is extremely centralized. It's the biggest risk to Bitcoin as I see it. Camino Drummer writing, Core claims a monopoly on Bitcoin. I'm not sure that's true if they do, or they won't claim it, but they often act as if they think that way. And then Camino goes on to write, Bitcoin needs an open development process with a GitHub, BIP, and mailing list separate from the proprietary core. And this is clearly true. This is clearly something that will take many, many years to fix as well, because these network effects around the Bitcoin dev mailing list and around the BIP process, etc., they are still very highly centralized, and they do benefit from network effects. So just saying go do your own, just because we're blocking your post, that's just like saying go come up with your own Bitcoin implementation, node implementation. It's not something that can be done overnight. Sammy writes here, the faster we all move away from core, the better. There's no point in arguing with them anymore. We need a new mailing list, a new crop of devs, and a new implementation or two that we can run, and nodes will naturally gravitate towards the implementation that better serves them. And then I wanted to finish with a tweet from Knut Svanholm, which I thought was also quite good, that addresses some of these issues while talking about your 12-word recovery seed in a very interesting philosophical way. So he writes, good morning. You can't really own sats. You can't really own Satoshis, which is the smallest unit of Bitcoin. There are 100 million Satoshis in one Bitcoin. What you can do, so you can't own them, but what you can do is act as if you own them if you know a secret. The ability to move a sat around on the time chain is a privilege reserved for those who know how to keep a secret. In other words, keep your 12-word secret or your 24 words. As he goes on to write, that secret might be 12 words, the location and or a pin to a hardware wallet, which contains your seed, or the actual hexadecimal private key. But at the end of the day, the only reason you can act as if you owned a certain number of Satoshis is that you know how to keep a secret. And this is why it's so important to keep your Bitcoin recovery seed offline. You can act as if you own them, as if you own these Satoshis, because number one, you find it implausible that anyone else would have access to the same key, because you know that finding it is like finding Where's Wally in the Andromeda Galaxy. There's many Bitcoin private keys as there are atoms in the universe, in the known universe, something like that I've talked about in previous videos. Number two, Knut writes, you find it improbable. So number one, you can you can be secure in knowing that your Bitcoin is safe, because it's like finding an atom. Finding your private seed is like finding an atom somewhere in the universe. It's much harder than finding a grain of sand on one of the world's beaches. So that's how you know your Bitcoin is safe. Number two, you find it improbable that there will be a network consensus around a rule change so detrimental to your sats that they will lose all of their value. Obviously, if Bitcoin and Bitcoiners in the community do really stupid things and destroy the network, then your Satoshis are not going to be worth very much. Knut goes on to write, you expect people to act in their own best monetary interests. So we're all motivated, at least those of us who own Bitcoin. People like Peter Todd, who says he doesn't own any Bitcoin. I'm not sure what his incentives are, but the rest of us have pretty good incentives to the extent we own Bitcoin. He goes on to write, when you choose to spam the time chain with crap that other users don't want there, your assessment of number two should change a bit. This would be under the cat soft fork. Changes do happen. In other words, changes to the network, consensus changes, soft forks. And if you don't want your transaction revoked at some point, you're better off sticking to making transactions that the network doesn't merely tolerate but approves of. In other words, monetary transactions. Bitcoin is censorship resistant and immutable money because of individuals who run nodes. Proof of work ensures the enforcement of whatever rules these people want to enforce, but those rules, in other words, the consensus rules, are not static. They rarely change, but not never. Spam the time chain at your own risk. I thought this was a nice way of teasing apart the distinction between monetary UTXOs and non-monetary UTXOs. And then Start9 had another post I wanted to finish with here. Start9 writes, thank you for thinking creatively about ways to mitigate spam. Start9 is talking to Claire Ostrom, who is the proposer for this new soft fork, the CAT, which aims to deal with spam on the blockchain. Thank you for thinking creatively about ways to mitigate spam and for taking the time to put together such a thorough proposal. We believe that releasing the CAT on existing ordinals, in other words for inscriptions, while a win for UTXO cleanup, is not worth the social cost. And this is fair. We don't have to force people to accept a proposal they don't want, obviously. This is part of the process. But what Start9 goes on to say after that, I think, is quite significant and shows how the CAT can be extremely powerful as something, as sort of Damocles hanging over the heads of spammers. So Start9 finishes the post by saying, however, now that the cat is out of the bag, pun intended, so to speak, future abuses cannot claim ignorance and should be prepared for what might happen. And so this makes me think that Start9 is willing to support the cat going forward from a certain point in time, maybe going forward from December 9th, 2025. So if you're still spamming the chain, maybe you did some inscriptions a couple years ago, but if you're still doing it, I think the odds of people wanting to freeze those UTXOs is going to go way up if you're aware that this mitigation exists and you're still doing bad behavior on the network. I like what Dimitri H. wrote here, and we'll finish with it. Not confiscation, just unspendable. The JPEG collectibles you bought will remain forever in your wallet. Isn't that great? I think this is a glass half full way of looking at what people are calling confiscation. And we'll have to tease through these issues because there may be some real issues of confiscation here. On the other hand, no one says that when spam, well, maybe spammers do, when their spam email gets sent to your spam folder, is that confiscation, or should you be forced to read every single spam email that people send to you? So we'll continue to tease apart these threads. I'm not ready to support the cat yet, but I thought you should be aware of the shenanigans that are going on behind the scene when it comes to the Bitcoin dev mailing list and people really trying to not let this soft fork proposal get through, which tells you something. It tells you that the spammers are indeed scared of it. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video, and let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.